like, where does overthinking stem from? It comes from, you've brought up the notion of not feeling enough, right? So it's that letdown of you haven't met these standards. And yeah, like, I would say everyone's going through it in their own different version. But I honestly feel like the reason why it's such a prominent thing in so many people's lives nowadays is because of social media. Hey besties, welcome back to another episode of Cats Chats and Coffee podcast. It's your girl Liv, I got Alex here with me, and we are back again. It is a beautiful sunny day, and we are just, I don't know, feeling good vibes about being in the studio recording today. Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. Maybe it's the bubbles in our system. We are...
What kind of bubbles are we talking about?
Yeah, so we're not doing we're not drinking our coffees, our usual like morning shots. We're actually doing
A different kind of shot.
basically, it's way more than a shot. No, we're drinking mimosas. So this is an evening recording for us, and we got our mimosas set up, and we're pretty excited about this.
Yeah, I'm loving this twist here.
I know, and honestly, who doesn't love a mimosa?
Yeah.
So
a mimosa after supper too. Not even like a morning mimosa. This is like a dinner mimosa.
yeah, like it's after 5 o'clock, and we're enjoying the sun, the last bit of the sun, and literally drinking mimosas while we record this. So it's gonna be a fun one for sure. How you feeling, Alex?
I'm feeling good. I'm so happy that the weather has been so beautiful the last little while.
Yeah.
It definitely is getting me out of my sad version, like that seasonal depression, and back into like, oh my God, I'm alive. I want to get outside. Hearing the seagulls in the morning outside my window, making me think of the beach, and I am just ready to get my summer vibes on.
Oh my God, me too. I don't know if anyone else is like this, but I feel like as soon as like seasonal depression actually hits me, it's the flip of a fucking switch.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, okay, yeah, I see the weather is nice. This seasonal depression is gonna like start to ease up, but it doesn't really like, you know, you kind of get positive outlook on life or whatever. But then literally one day I just wake up and I'm like, the clouds are clear and like I'm just not seasonally depressed anymore.
Yeah, totally.
So let's pray for like no more snow from here on.
Oh my gosh. I think we should be in the clear. It's supposed
so.
to be 20 something degrees coming up here.
Oh my God.
So I am definitely looking forward to that, and I just cannot wait for patio drinks and you know,
more mimosas
getting my
while we record.
mimosas, getting my shorts out,
Yeah.
and feeling good waking up every day.
Oh my God, I know. I mean, it's literally around the corner.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're gonna get into today's episode is going to be another fun one, very similar to last week's episode, which if you guys haven't listened to that one yet, be sure to go check it out. We touched on feeling stuck and just kind of had a sit down, hang out, like open chat with us, which today's episode is going to be a similar vibe. It's just going to be a little bit more in Alex's control for today. I don't even want to say that because we really are just talking off the cuff. It's going to be so like spontaneous. But yeah, we are going to touch on a coffee feature that we've already shared. We made a reel about this place. So the place is Beanville Roastry.
Yeah.
And I think it's on Bedford Highway. So we went to that. It was, I mean, we went a week or so ago, but we just posted it last week on Instagram. We made a reel, so you guys should definitely check that out. But yeah, we had a cool experience, Alex.
Yeah,
like, that was fun.
Totally different than any of the experiences we've had so far at any of the local coffee shops that we went to.
More personable.
Yeah, I was definitely at a place of where we'd like to get to with other coffee shops. More of like that networking, meeting the people behind the baristas and
like the people actually running the place, not just handing you your coffee and like jetting out the door.
Exactly. It was really cool. And Liv had snuck off to the bathroom, and our one of the guys working there, he brought over our regular drink. So we were just ordering like a regular latte, regular iced coffee like we normally do, to just test it out with a couple of treats.
Yeah.
And then we just got to talking, and I asked him a couple questions. I told him about the podcast, and then Liv popped out, and kind of the rest is history. So yeah, tell him about kind of what the experience was like for us.
Totally. So we got like our generic coffees, but they the reason why I said it was a little bit more personable is because this place specifically, they carry Arabic and Turkish coffee, which this is new to both of us in the sense that neither of us have had an opportunity to try this yet. We kind of touched in the past, like, we're not really, you're never going to see us sitting down for a cortado or like an espresso or like straight, I don't know, coffee like that is a little strong for us. We're more of like the sweetener and creamer added to it gals, but we had the opportunity to not only watch them make some Turkish coffee for us, but yeah, they were generous enough to allow us to try it and
it was
give us a
cool.
really good first opportunity. So that was really fun.
Yeah, I know we were like whispering to each other while we were in the line and like noticed that there was like the Arabic and Turkish coffee, and we were like both super nervous to try it. We were like, oh, well, we can't order it. What if we don't like it? And,
oh
my
like,
gosh,
I actually want a coffee to drink right now.
And then the guy behind the counter was super kind, like Liv said, to give us our
a demonstration and
and it was really cool. So for anyone who doesn't know, Turkish coffee is made by using a copper boiler, similar to like I guess a version of a kettle, and then they utilize this like small sand pit, like hot sand, and they boil the coffee beans right inside the copper kettle, and then use the hot sand for that, which was awesome to see.
It was definitely a cool method. Yeah, for sure. Nothing that like I've ever seen before. So we made a little reel on Instagram about it, so you guys can go watch that. And if you're interested or if you've never tried Turkish coffee like us before, like this is definitely a cool spot to check out for sure.
Yeah, it was very like funny enough because it was like super dark roasted feeling, but it was super light when we tasted it. It kind of had more like a tea.
It definitely tasted more like a tea aftertaste than coffee for sure. But like if you were to drink straight espresso, it had that same like
gritty vibe. Yeah, it was way thicker.
Very thick,
filled
you feel
with
it on your
different
tongue.
Cardamom and other spices, which was really cool. I know that the beans are infused with that, which is what kind of makes it that special Turkish coffee. So yeah, we were really excited, and we'll definitely go back. And yeah, if you guys want to check out the reel, like Liv said, to see the actual experience of the Turkish coffee being made, go do that on our Instagram at Cats, Chats, and Coffee, and let us know what you think.
Yeah, definitely check it out. It's a cool spot. But yeah, we're going to, that's our coffee feature for today. Again, we're here drinking our mimosas though. We're on a very different vibe today than we were when we visited Beanville. But yeah, we're going to just get started with today's episode. It's going to be, a little bit of a shorter, I say shorter, but you know us, we talk a lot.
Shorter. We're aiming for it to be shorter.
Yeah.
But you never know.
Yeah, but again, just off the cuff, from the heart, just, hang out with us, grab your mimosa, or maybe it's the morning for you when you're listening to this, and grab a coffee and just hang out with us.
Oh, yeah. So
Alex is going to take the lead because she's in charge for it.
Yeah. So, like Liv had mentioned last week, she had surprised me with a topic. We hadn't really talked about it before we sat down to record the episode. So it was really going to give us a chance to just speak from our heart, speak off the cuff, be most authentic to what we were feeling at that moment. And we thought, since she had come up with a topic last week, that it would be my turn to come up with a topic this week. Little did I know how difficult this process of coming up with just a random topic without doing any research, creating any outline, like figuring any of that extra stuff out was going to be, which is funny because I thought that just answering a question of a topic that I had no idea and prepared for was going to be hard. Like, this was even harder.
I thought for sure I was setting her up for like the
success,
utmost success.
Oh, this is easy.
I was like, this was such an easy for me. I just literally picked the topic, and that's
and we went. No. So the funny thing is that this theme, the topic that we're going to chat about today, is really relative to how my experience with picking the topic general was. And so I actually just decided this, not even kidding, like 10 minutes ago. So we're going to talk about, which is something that's super present in my life, such a common theme, and I think it will be for you as well. The topic and the theme today, drum roll please. See, look at us.
It feels dramatic. We're like building it up. I'm like, just get to it already.
It's like we're going to talk about plants now. We're going to talk about overthinking.
Overthinking.
Yeah, overthinking. And I know
okay.
that is huge for me. It shows up
huge.
a lot in business, in my personal life, in my relationships. And I'm sure it's going to show up a lot for other people listening today. So, so let's just chat a little bit about what that means for us, how that shows up, what kind of tools that we use to combat overthinking, why we think we overthink, and all that stuff. And I'm going to try not to overthink this right now because my brain is like behind the scenes going on, don't forget this, don't forget this, don't forget this, what if this? So I am trying not to overthink as we speak. So Liv, let's go right back to you.
Okay, put me on the spot. I love it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's your turn now, baby.
I know. I did feel that last week, but...
But yeah, so overthinking is obviously, like I just said, a big thing, a big theme that it shows up in most of our lives at some point or another. How does that show up for you? What does overthinking feel like for you?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you said the word, and I kind of like how we're doing this, like, on the spot, because now the only thing I can really talk about is where my brain initially took me, right?
Yeah.
So you said overthinking. The first thing that kind of came up for me was, like, social anxiety is probably the immediate place where I personally experience, like, the most outrageous overthinking spirals, I would say.
Totally.
So that's either just, like, I don't know, being in an uncomfortable social situation, or oftentimes, like, I really struggle to be alone and to be in public places, and that just kind of depends on my mood. But yeah, I feel like it puts me in my own head where I just go off on a spiral and, like, I don't know. Yeah.
What are some of the things you overthink about? Like, what causes, when you're in a social situation, what are the things that you're thinking about at that moment? Like, what are you overthinking about?
Okay, again, so first thing that came to my mind, and I hate saying this, but this is real raw, this is, like, in the moment stuff. It's my body, unfortunately. It's the way that I look. And I tend to overthink more if I'm dressed up or if I feel like I put an effort for my look that day. Like, maybe I put on makeup or I did my hair, or I'm just going to my coffee shop to, like, I don't know, grab a coffee or something. But if I put effort into the way that I look that day, I find myself definitely overthinking typical things like, oh, I'm overdressed, or this looks silly, or I don't know, I feel uncomfortable in this specific, like, outfit. So, like, people have to be able to hear that or see that. But yeah, I don't know, it fluctuates for me, but I think the body is probably, or, like, the way that I'm being presented or viewed by people, definitely.
I think that that's a big thing for a lot of women, and
Absolutely.
I think that we tend to overthink when we are feeling like not good enough, or we have that self-saboteur in our mind. Our ego starts to get in the way.
Yeah.
I was telling you earlier, like, the chattering monkeys in some places that's what they would call it. It's like the chattering monkeys that don't stop, and they're constantly telling you, oh, you're not good enough, or that person's staring at you weird, or...
Well, it's like that, like, I've heard people talk about this where they say their brain, like, just in present moment, they're not thinking of anything. And as someone who classifies herself as, like, an anxious person and an overthinker, my brain is never not thinking about something. It's actually very difficult for me to get to a state where my brain isn't thinking about anything at all. And I even struggle with that when I'm meditating or trying to,
calm the mind,
get present and just, like,
Absolutely. I think the greatest point that you just said is, like, anxiety, whether that's, like, social anxiety or work anxiety, or anxiety when it comes to your relationships and how you're a daughter or a girlfriend or a friend. And that is
the way you show up.
The way you show up. And the funny thing that we often forget about is, like, 9 times out of 10, when we're thinking about all these things, no one is actually thinking about us. And it's so hard to remind yourself of those things in that moment, because those feelings of stress, anxiety, fear, whatever that is for you in that moment is so large that it doesn't matter that in the reality of the situation that they're probably not thinking about you, or in most terms they're probably overthinking how they're feeling, like, acting, speaking,
going through the same thing in their own head.
Exactly. And it's kind of sad, because, like, I wonder what life would be like if we could just, like, turn that part off and just be present and just be unattached or detached from the outcome, or, in my personal feeling is like lowering that expectation of not only myself, of other people around me, and just believing and trusting in like that face value experience. And sometimes I think that for me, overthinking really takes me out of opportunities to like really experience
like
things
having a good
level.
time.
Yeah,
so
joy,
for example, like if you're out with some friends or something, like you could be having like it could be the greatest little like girls' night. You guys are all going out to the bars or something, but there's this like one creep that won't leave you alone, or you see someone that you went to school with and they're staring at you, or do you know what I mean? And then you spiral off and you start, filling in the blanks. You start going off on the scenarios of potentially what could happen, and that would bring on an entirely different mood to what like the night is meant to be or what your intentions were.
And you literally like screw yourself out of like a really awesome situation.
Well, it's a stealer
experience.
Of joy.
It is a stealer of joy, and it's really sad, and it's like the reality of the world right now. And it's and I think like I'll just kind of, for myself, I know that overthinking comes from a lot of past experiences of feeling not good enough. And being either validated by that feeling from somebody else, whether it was an ex-boyfriend or a past colleague, or even sometimes my family members, where I've just tried to be a version of myself or show up where I think it's, I'm doing a great job, or I'm awesome, or I feel beautiful,
good about yourself.
I feel good, and then all of a sudden I'm like knocked off my pedestal and fall to the ground, and then that just starts to encompass my entire, and overwhelms my feelings of how I'm behaving and acting.
So I'm really glad that you explained that like that, because I think the saddest thing, like literally while you were explaining that to me, is there's nothing worse than like meeting a new person down the road and you have an interaction with them and something happens where they start to go into the spiral of overthinking, literally like you just said, and you as like an outsider witness this happen where they're overthinking something around you based on something that has happened to them previously. And that one, I'm getting goosebumps literally thinking about this right now, because I can think of a couple like ex-partners specifically who had been pretty severely traumatized by either like a woman in their life, whether it was a mother or like their previous girlfriend or something. And it ends up literally like morphing and changing the way that your brain reacts to these social situations, or when you then get into a healthy relationship down the road. My entire body is lit up with goosebumps right now, because like
totally,
that's a really heavy one, because people don't realize how much damage you're doing to someone in the moment, that like this is now going to stick with them years down the road, or to the next situation that this happens.
That's a great point, Liv. It is honestly like, we look at this from a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And people hear of fight or flight. Freeze has been something that has recently, in the last couple of decades, come up as a part of that trauma response. But fawning is a thing that I will do, which is people pleasing, and I'll people please a lot.
Almost like overcompensating.
Because I'm getting in my own head and I can't get out of my own way. And I think, like I had mentioned, being validated by my own fears by other people, like externally being told, you are this, you are that.
Like you anticipate that they're like going to be disappointed in you, or they're not going to be okay with this, and then that
gets validated and approved.
Right.
And so that has been something that's been on my mind for my life, and then I'll feel oftentimes really misunderstood, and I'll go into certain situations already anticipating, already fearing that that's a potential outcome, or that's a possibility, even if it really isn't. We talked about imposter syndrome last time. We talked about, we did mention feeling misunderstood and feeling like you need to justify or clarify, or constantly, it's almost like they say, like, I'm the punchline to the joke, or I'll make fun of myself first so that you don't get a chance to do it. It's like I've done that even in situations.
You know what? That's a really valid point that you just made, because that was something when our friendship first started and we were more like acquaintances and just getting to know each other. I noticed that you did that a lot. And at the time, I don't think I really thought much into it, but I was like, it's kind of sad.
She's really mean to herself.
Yeah. And like, you know, when you're in one of those situations where, like, kind of how I was just saying, where like it comes up and it makes you feel a certain way, like less so like you feel sad for this person, but more so it makes you feel uncomfortable because it might be triggering a past, like an old version of you where you were going through something very similar to that, or you were that type of person that would spiral off in an overthinking or like a severe people pleasing, or like, I don't know, a lot of people will just make morbid jokes or put themselves down to
feel like comfortable, because if you can laugh with me, you're not laughing at me.
Yeah.
And I think like that is, it is kind of like sad when you break it all down, but I know I've noticed that in a lot of people more often than we realize. It's like hiding behind the laughter or hiding behind perfectionism, and like that shows up a lot in our work. I know both of us are big perfectionists, and we want to do the best and be the best, and feel like, you know, if we're already thinking what we're doing isn't good enough, like, let me go above and beyond and beat your expectations so that there's no room for you
failure,
to feel disappointed.
Yeah, for me to, like,
and
slip
so
up.
It really is, like you mentioned, like a trauma response. Like, oftentimes if we had avoidant parents, or we had teachers that said something, or a friend or a bully that even said something to us in school or in sports or in a friendship, that little comment that could have meant nothing at the time will carry with that person for the rest of their life until they become self-aware of it enough to want to work through those things.
Totally. It's actually really sad because, like, how many times have you, like, been talking to someone and one of those things will come up from previous time and you're just like, oh, honey, like, I want you to heal through this, or like, it breaks my heart that you still feel that way about yourself. I want to bring this up because shortly after we started this episode, like, my brain immediately started to go down this direction, and I think it's a really powerful input to bring into this conversation, because, like, where does overthinking stem from? It comes from, you've brought up the notion of not feeling enough, right? So it's that letdown of you haven't met these standards, and yeah, like, I would say everyone's going through it in their own different version, but I honestly feel like the reason why it's such a prominent thing in so many people's lives nowadays is because of social media, and because of the technology that we have in front of our faces at all times. Because, like, comparison, do you know what I mean? Like, that is the number one thing that makes us feel like we're not good enough. That steals anything that you feel good about yourself. Like, oh, for me personally, I feel like I'm a great model. Oh, I feel like I'm doing great with photography for only being a year in or something. The second I pull up my little phone and I go on social media and I look at another model who's, I don't know, getting paid to be on the Playboy magazine or something like that, and I look at this photographer who does it full time, I'm immediately losing any joy that I just felt about how I was doing in my own personal modeling and photography, because I'm now comparing my journey, my story, which frankly is not the same, to this other person. And to be honest, it's really quite sad. The thing that I struggle with the most is I look at these people's lives and I tell myself I want them, or I see that thing, I want that thing that they have, or they're, you know, they're out traveling or going out posting these reels of their weekend and it looked fabulous. It looked extravagant. Oh, they're living the dream.
Totally.
When in reality, like, that person may or may not have cried themselves to sleep that night. That person might be in an abusive relationship. That person could have lost both of their parents today. Like, we compare ourselves to these people that we see on the internet, and it's just blatantly not real.
Yeah.
And it puts these expectations, and that's why a lot of our, like, overthinking, anxious thoughts that we'll spiral off on, like, if you actually sit there and pick your brain about these, like, thoughts that are coming and going for you, how many of them can you sit there and say are not real, are not true? Probably like 75 to 85% of them. Like, I would say a lot of them are kind of outrageous or unrealistic to even happen to you. But we get so, like, stuck and not obsessive, but really just caught up in that, because we're looking at social media all the time. We're constantly comparing ourselves to other people's lives. We're comparing ourselves to that person we went to school with that's off doing this, and
that's
it's
a huge
unfortunate
thing. I think, you know, we kind of touched on this whole social media part right here. Also touches on, like, feeling, you had mentioned earlier about your body and feeling like people are constantly judging you. And I have noticed,
because the only thing they have to look at is my my profile, me, what I put out there.
Yeah, and so I think, like, as I've aged and started to get wrinkles and I've started to find gray hairs and things about me, like, if I was, like, feeling not pretty enough when I was younger, this is now adding to that and exasperating. And then all of a sudden it starts to snowball and you're like, okay, well, I'm not married. I don't have kids. What if I'm not good enough? Or what if I'm undateable? And you start to spiral.
Yeah.
And that one little thought earlier in the day that was just a thought in passing has now turned into, not only am I undateable, I also suck at my job, and I don't own a house, really like it. And like I should have this by now, or I should lose 10 pounds, or what, you have an interaction with a stranger in public and you think, what did they think about what I said? Or oftentimes
I hate when that happens.
I'll meet people and like say, put my foot in my mouth, and then I leave, and the whole night
you can't stop thinking about it.
Oh my god, I can't believe I said that.
The worst part is they maybe thought about it one more time and like chuckled at like how silly it was,
or didn't even think
twice about it, but you're like literally ruminating on it for the rest of the night.
Yeah, I've seen TikTok videos where there's like a girl and she's like, okay, like she's walking around, she's like, bye, love you so much, that was so fun, and then she's like getting into her car, and then the voiceover comes and she's like, oh my god, I talk too much, I talk too little, did they ask me questions, I wonder if they had fun, I had fun. Meanwhile, the other girl's like, la-di-da, that was so awesome, I can't wait to see her again next week.
Literally never thinks about it again.
Oh my god, and I'm like, that is so me sometimes.
But like, you know what, that's so real for so many people. And like, I think the overthinking and like whatever that looks like for each individual person is obviously completely dependent on like what their life experience has been like.
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking, plain and simple, like your upbringing, like your childhood, when your brain is under development, honey, like those are the prime years as to what's going to make or break what type of attachment you have, which is how you're going to interact in social situations and relationships down the road.
Totally,
so that's a huge one. But yeah, I definitely think the social media is a huge thing for us now, and I think it's brought on a lot of anxiety for a lot of people. And yeah, kind of just how you said there, like it definitely, so just for me, for example, I obviously do modeling. My Instagram, my social platforms would look a lot of my body. Do you know what I mean? I post my face, I post my body, I dress in different types of lingerie, different types of outfits, and I will post a lot of that stuff, and I have posted it for many years. But that's immediately only showing people one side of me, my body, which I will give myself a little bit of credit. I'm trying to pull back a little bit on that.
You're balancing.
I'm trying to make some
facets.
changes. Yeah. And to obviously this podcast is putting a different side of myself out there as well. So that I am actively working on that. But so it makes sense when I go out in public and these anxious, overwhelmed, racing thoughts come through my mind, a lot of them are going to be focused on my body, because that just happens to be something that I have a lot of insecurities about.
People also probably comment on that part of your life more than anything else you've really experienced.
I would almost say that like I'm my body, and then people look at me and find the person who's inside there. So that has definitely, like, that's just a little bit of insight into me, who I am as a person, and like what my experience looks like, obviously.
Well, it goes back to one of our first few episodes of like tying our value and our worth to what we do or how we show up externally to other people versus like our heart. It's like, what can I give to you? What can I like perform for you? How can I be that little monkey with the tambourine versus like this
give
is
you what you need.
Like my true self, and like all my worth and value comes from like how good and kind and sweet of a person I am,
like who I genuinely am,
versus what I can provide for you, or how much money I make, or how beautiful or not beautiful I am, how much weight I am, and
what I look like, all of it.
And like your point to that social media is like, you're so right, it is a lot easier for us to look at what other people have that we might not have. And again, it's specific to where we are at in our lives. You know, if you're young 20s, it could be school and having a specific degree or starting a specific career. If you're in your 30s, I know like this is a big thing for me, is like watching married friends with children and being like, I should have that, and what are people thinking that I don't have that it must look so bad, and people are probably wondering what's wrong with me, and like all those thoughts are tied to society's
That's what it is,
expectation of women or men or age or where you're supposed to be or who you're supposed to be, how successful at that specific point of your life.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It makes me wonder, like, why do you think humans, even though we know that we're all so different, why do we still want so desperately to be the same as everyone else?
Yeah, I guess connection and acceptance.
I think it's like, because obviously I don't think humans are meant, like, we're not meant to be living in buildings with all these walls around us and be separated from everyone. Like, there's supposed to be way more community and connection, and I feel like as society as a whole, we've definitely disconnected from that over the generations, which is, it's sad. And that literally brings us to a place where when we want a connection, what is the first thing we do? We go and we pick up our phone and probably either text our best friend or call your mom, or maybe you go on Instagram and check your likes because that gives you the sense of validation, connection and love and acceptance that you're looking for.
Yeah.
But
I definitely think it is that feeling of being accepted.
It is.
And good enough.
Yeah, and we also, like, I know we touched on this a little, very briefly, the hustle culture. Like, we definitely have so much more to talk on this, absolutely, and a lot more, like, opinions and thoughts behind this. But we're at a place in the world where I think everyone's kind of realizing, like, we're exhausted. Mm-hmm. We're working ourselves to death. A lot of people are
burnt out,
but are also passing away and not even enjoying the lives that they just lived through. Like, so we're kind of
so hard to just not.
We're not, like, we're not born work to live. Like, it's supposed to be very, very different. But yeah, that's just not how the world has been for us lately. So yeah, I don't know. I think definitely social media, technology, all of that is a very, very heavy one in this.
The economy, yeah, definitely plays a huge role in that. So to tie back to what I was saying earlier about how we even got to this episode, Liv was just saying for me to pick a topic for us to randomly riff off each other off the cuff.
It's so easy. It's so easy.
Yeah, and I was super busy all last week. I had my friend here and I had so much going on and I didn't really think much about it, but it was great because I was like, okay, well, I don't have to overthink this.
Yeah, we're not making an outline or kind of like going in depth.
If I have time to do it, or even if I don't have time, I'm going to go above and beyond and try to put so much detail into it. Yeah. And I really got to today and I hadn't really picked a topic. I was really not sure. And so I started to panic and I started to think, oh my God, what if the topic I pick is stupid? What if Liv doesn't like this topic? What if we don't really have much to say? You know, what if blah, 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 or I put my foot in my mouth and I started to panic and overthink about making sure I show up for her and for you guys listening, that we're giving you guys worthwhile, valuable content. Mm-hmm. And instead of just like taking a breath and going to our list of pre-written topics and themes, I started like doing all this research, and not only did I not just pick one theme, I wrote out 3 entire outlines
of different topics and different themes
with titles and questions and statistics and like just literally like the opposite of what Liv asked me to do. Yeah. And then on top of that, like a list of 25 other potential ideas and what they meant and all this stuff. And as soon as Liv comes in, I like open my laptop, I sit down, I'm like, all right, so.
It literally felt like I just like arrived for class.
Yeah.
Like we briefly talked today, but I had no sense of this panic until the second I walked through the door and she opened that laptop. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I'm like, I have our episodes for the next 6 months.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, and what are we recording today?
And then I was like, I still don't know. Which I laughed because as we were talking and like throughout our random updates for each other, we haven't seen each other in a little while, I just started to pinpoint the hilarity in what I was doing. And
when you like come and get clear and you suddenly were like, wow,
take a breath.
I was really overthinking that.
Take a step back.
Yeah, like I really went off on a little
tangent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, there's no room for me to look like I haven't done my job or didn't do what we asked. And she can't complain.
What I was asking of her was like, quite literally, don't do anything. Yeah. Just
for
come
once,
up with like,
don't do
just pick a word and we'll talk about it or something. Like, make it nice and easy. But yeah, I think that, I mean, I'm sorry that it put you through that much stress. But I think it brought up a really amazing topic for us to touch on, and not only is it something that was obviously extremely prominent for you, like in that very moment, but I think it's just something that's very prominent for us. Like, we have a freaking podcast now, man. Like,
it really is challenging for me, but
it's different.
Let me just say, like, I said this to Liv right before we pressed play on the record. It was like, I'm actually really grateful for this opportunity to practice being a calmer, not overthinking version. Like, I have internal anxiety, so I actually hide it really well. I'm a high functioning person, so you don't really know unless, you know, I'm super blotchy and you can see it.
Or you're like really good at reading people or something. Yeah.
I'm very good at acting like everything is great when internally I'm like falling apart.
Blown, yeah.
So
it's impressive, actually.
Yeah, the funny thing is, being vulnerable with my friends, they start to get to know when I'm like struggling, or I'll just straight up be like, hey, listen, I have no freaking clue what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
But it really put into perspective how I was asking the universe for this one specific thing that you and I have chatted about, which I want to work on, which is being confident in who I am and getting to my point and not talking so much or over talking when I'm nervous or feeling like I'm not like smart or good enough. Yeah. So like a big theme for me was that I was always told is like, it takes a long time for me to get to my point, or I am constantly like justifying or defending my points of view or opinions or like overcompensating or people pleasing to make sure everyone's comfortable.
Yeah. Which anyone looking at that, like with a little bit of awareness or maybe experience in the mental health realm, can obviously know that that's a trauma response.
Yeah.
It's a coping mechanism.
Totally. And it showed up today.
Yeah. Very actively.
Yeah. And it was like such a funny way that it all kind of was like this well-rounded, like it's full circle. It's a full circle experience. I asked the universe to help me become a more concise, like to the point person where I'm not constantly verbal diarrheaing.
Closer to the version of like your higher
what
self.
I want to be, exactly. Yeah. Like looking and feeling and sounding confident.
Yeah.
And so in order for me to be that version of myself, I have to be presented with opportunities to practice that. And this gave me that chance to do that.
That's exactly
I failed miserably.
You didn't though. Like, look at us.
I did, but
I think we're doing pretty good. We're like we're like 30 minutes into this episode. And I mean, we're going to hear your guys' feedback. You guys let us know what you thought of this episode talking about overthinking and the previous episode talking about feeling stuck, because I think like these are two topics that everyone and their friends are going through. Like, everyone has something. It's going to look different for everyone, but I think everyone has something to input here, or has something that they can relate to. And it's definitely a very prominent thing. Obviously, you in this very moment when I showed up and us being like, we're going to record. Yeah. But also, yeah, like you said, like
live version of this.
Yes. But yeah, like starting a podcast, like we're putting ourselves out there socially. We're putting ourselves out there to be critiqued. You guys are listening to everything we say. And yeah, like we're not there to, like, all those judgments or criticism and stuff, like, we're not there to defend ourselves. So there's a lot of overthinking behind the scenes that can go on with something like this. But I like that you said, like, you've been asking the universe for basically challenges and places to practice this, and I've done the same. And
the universe is like, here is Liv. She will be your guide for this experience.
Just throw my Scorpio sister into my life, and all of a sudden, it's gonna be a trip.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
One last thing I do want to end on before we wrap this all up is, when this experience happens for us, what is the one takeaway of advice that you can give to anyone listening who's sitting there being like, I'm an overthinker, I have anxiety, or I feel similarly, that you do in your life, or you can help other people to overcome this experience or help them get on a better path?
Yeah, totally. Okay. So similarly to like how you just said, like, you fill the air whenever you're anxious or overthinking, and you kind of like talk to fill fill it in.
Space, yeah.
I almost do the opposite. All of that talking that you're doing out loud is happening in my head. Similarly to you, you'll look at me and I'll still be present in the conversation and participating, but there's a full dialect going on behind the scenes that
internal versus external processor.
yeah, exactly. So I feel like in those and I'll notice this where like I might be in like a social situation with my friends, something comes up for me, either I'm triggered or I don't know, maybe I had a bad day or something comes up and I feel it just kind of like sticking with me. The first thing I'll do when I get home or that I am trying to be better at doing immediately when this comes up for me is journaling.
Yeah.
Because I find when it's repetitive thoughts and scenarios that aren't realistic or overthinking in the sense that like a lot of this stuff like it's not logical. It's kind of outrageous, like I said. Like, it's often left field. So when you journal it out, or maybe you don't like writing, maybe you decide to call your mom, or I don't know, maybe you do an audio note. Me and Alex will send each other audio notes and sometimes rant about things. And a lot of the times, like, what you're saying in that moment or what you're writing out while you're journaling it, like, you know it's not real, or you're just kind of spilling out all these details, and then you get to look at it and see and confirm for yourself, like, that was a really negative thing that I was saying about myself. Yeah. Or that is a really absurd thought that doesn't even, like, there's no proof to this. There's no validation. Right. I can actually pick this apart and prove it wrong.
Totally.
So I think journaling would be, like, my number one thing, or maybe that looks a little different for you, but find some sort of resource where you get all of these, like, overwhelming, like, thoughts just out.
That energy out of your body.
Yeah, just take a video of yourself talking, like anything, whatever it is that you need. But I think, definitely get the energy out.
Yeah, I think a great add to that is like interrupting that pattern or interrupting that thought pattern. Yeah. It's like taking that step, take breath. I was going to say breath and back at the same time because I have two thoughts in my mind. This is a perfect example. Just like thinking so quickly before I can speak. Taking a step back to interrupt that thought pattern, changing the narrative.
Turn it positive.
And reminding yourself, like, that things aren't that bad or they could always be worse, or all these other thoughts that could change that dynamic from a negative one to a positive one, like you just said.
Yeah. Or the things you're thinking about yourself
distracting yourself.
Literally not true.
Right. With something that makes you feel good and makes you feel... reminding yourself, like,
I think it's
you're good enough.
I think it's also a good idea to do something that's intentionally like self-soothing in these moments. Like,
self-care is really important in
this. And especially like in a situation like that, we can oftentimes start to feel even guiltier or more shameful for these outrageous thoughts or like the scenarios that we're coming up with. And then you start to
be like, oh, I'm so stupid for even thinking that.
Yeah, see, right? And then you go off so even farther. So definitely like be gentle with yourself, have some grace. This is why I say like journaling is really good for me, because when I start to see them, I can actually see how sad a lot of these things like are coming up for me, like how sad they make me, or just
give your inner child a hug and tell them you love them.
Yeah. And just be there, be present, get it out. It definitely helps for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, I think
ready to wrap up.
Right. I really like that Liv mentioned you guys listening. If there are things you want to share, I just have to say that I have received some fantastic, fascinating things from people who are listening about feeling courageous to, end a relationship or quit a job after listening. Start their own thing, feeling like they're not alone. And so we want you guys to continue to keep messaging us, to let us know how these episodes make you feel. If there's topics like Liv had mentioned that you want us to cover or go over, or if you want to share your
anything
story,
you just want to hear us talk about.
Today we talked about overthinking. Last week we talked about feeling stuck. If you have those feelings and you don't have anyone to talk to, you guys can reach out to us on our Instagram at Cats, Chats, and Coffee, or you can follow Liv at Liv Bryanton with 2 N's.
Yep.
And I am Alexandria_XO. Alexandria S_XO.
It is. I think there's an S in there.
Yeah. So you guys can follow us on our personal Instagrams.
Yeah. Reach out though. Like we love hearing your stories. We love hearing your feedback about the episodes, and like we are providing for you guys. So we want to make sure that you guys like what we're talking about, what we're sharing, and we absolutely want to touch on topics that you guys want to hear more about as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thanks so much for being here with us today, guys. Stay tuned, like I said, on our Instagram to find out little hints of what we'll be chatting about next. You can follow us on wherever you stream your favorite podcasts. We are on Amazon, Spotify, We really appreciate you and all
Thanks
of
for
your
hanging out for us.
Support.
Both of us
I know
stuttering.
the mimosas
Honestly,
have officially
yeah,
gone to me.
we're chatting a little bit, and like our cheeks are red, and like
God,
we're
this
actually
is so
feeling
funny.
like a little bubbly.
Yeah.
That was a big mimosa though,
It was
Alex.
a delicious mimosa, and we're about to finish the bottle. So
Yeah.
we love you guys. Stay tuned for next week. Thanks for being here.
Bye, guys.
Bye. You should see my body. It is fully rashed. I look like a crazy lollipop. Like what?
Lollipop?
I don't know. Strawberry. What
Yeah.
is this? What is this horrible?
You're red.
Embarrassing.
Yeah.
Oh
I can feel my cheeks are toasty.
I'm so
but that's
hot.
from that. You
Yeah,
put
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot. We just each
That
drank a
is
full glass of
nothing.
champagne.
Yeah.
Literally
Full
come back and
bottle.
be like, so guys, we're feeling the champagne now.
Yeah, I'm literally overthinking myself. And what I'm saying right now.